Good evening, I'm Jeff Phillips. The Central West floods have claimed their first casualty. The body of an elderly woman was discovered near the Bogan River at Ganumbla between Parkes and Peak Hill. Both police and the SES say the tragic death must send a message to people that floodwater is dangerous and unpredictable.
The result of last week's heavy downpour north of Parkes was being felt today, with police investigating how an elderly woman died in floodwater. At around 3:30 yesterday afternoon, police went to Avondale Lane at Ganumbla, 30 kilometres northwest of Parkes, after a mine worker discovered this abandoned ute stuck in floodwater. Police searched the area and found a woman's body about 500 metres from the stranded ute. It's believed the woman was returning to Parkes on Friday night when she got stuck in almost 2-metre-high floodwater while attempting to cross a causeway on the Bogan River.
We believe that the driver might have tried to get out of the vehicle and subsequently got washed away in the floodwater.
The woman's husband had been on another property. Police say it's a tragic incident that people were unaware she was missing.
A lot of people had travelled along this country road, but because we've had so much rain and we've had situations where people attempt to cross flooded causeways and creeks, it was an assumption that the driver had got stuck and left the vehicle there because they couldn't get the vehicle started.
The death comes as a warning to drivers not to risk crossing floodwater. Last night, a family in the Capertee area also attempted to cross floodwater, but were lucky to escape uninjured.
Just goes to show that people aren't heeding the message about trying to go through floodwater or flooded creeks and rivers. And I hate to say it, but we're probably going to see some more lives lost if people don't take heed of that message.
The SES is now bracing for the second wave of widespread heavy downpours expected tonight.
We've actually door knocked the residents of Molong this morning to warn them that there's rain coming because we've got such a short warning time. But we'd encourage people to listen to the messages that are broadcast over the media. Be ready for floods, ready to evacuate if you're asked, but most importantly, keep away from floodwater. Don't try to enter it or drive through it or walk through it. It's fairly dangerous.
Kira Ballinger, Win News.
Meantime, residents in already flood-affected regions are preparing for more heavy rain tomorrow and Friday. Tom Saunders from the Weather Channel joins us now. Tom, what can we expect?
Jeff, everything's pretty much playing out as we expected. We're seeing a band of heavy rain and thunderstorms move across western New South Wales today. It'll get to the New South Wales slopes and ranges later tonight, and then heavy rain continuing overnight and tomorrow, but it will be gradually easing to showers tomorrow though, and then contracting to northeast New South Wales on Friday. Now, between now and then, most of western New South Wales is likely to see around 50 millimetres of rain. We could have slightly heavier falls on the southern and central slopes and ranges. Now, because the ground is already completely saturated, we've already got flooding, we're expecting a second flood peak as a result, right along the Macquarie, the Castlereagh and also the Lachlan River valleys.
Tom Saunders from the Weather Channel there. 150 shopkeepers from Dubbo have heard the latest on the flood risk at a specially called meeting this afternoon. The State Emergency Services, the City Council and Dubbo Police called the meeting to keep business owners in touch with the latest developments. The meeting heard the next predicted flood peak would arrive tomorrow morning, but that the expected peak would be 1 metre below the level needed to inundate shops in Macquarie Street. A Dubbo small business owner is claiming police and state government agencies should show some common sense in administering flood safety regulations. Dubbo plumber Rick Honeysett was trying to get access to his storage shed on the flooded Gilgandra Road today to retrieve equipment before the next flood peak comes through. He claims he was stopped by the RTA from using an unregistered vehicle to load the equipment, while another man was booked by police.
Well, we'd like to get as much as possible as we can out, but other people are trying to get stuff out of here this morning on the low waters, and which they could do so, but the police actually booked them through being in the water.
Police argue the regulations are designed to keep people safe. Forbes Mayor Phyllis Miller is pushing for the federal and state governments to deliver an assistance package to help farmers who have lost everything in the devastating floods. Premier Christina Keneally has already acted, asking the federal government to extend exceptional circumstances funding.
It's been said before, drought starts and ends with a flood. This year it's playing out. Farmers around the region have battled 10 years of drought and now they're suffering the cruelest blow, with huge downpours inundating their paddocks and ruining their hopes of a bumper harvest. During the drought, farmers in some declared areas of the state were eligible for financial assistance under the exceptional circumstances criteria. The relief payment is due to finish March 31 next year, which would have been warranted had the farmers got this year's crops off and the money in the bank. But once again, the weather didn't work in their favour, prompting concerned Forbes Mayor Phyllis Miller to write to both state and federal governments for another assistance program to ease the burden on farmers affected by flood damage and loss of crop.
I've got a lot of concerned farmers, and I think it's really important that we support them. I think we've got to look at the suicides that have been going on throughout the drought, let alone when you think you're going to have a good crop and you lose everything. I really believe that it's time the government stepped in and tried to assist them.
Premier Keneally has already taken the concerns on board. She's written this week to the Prime Minister asking for an extension of the exceptional circumstances declared areas for another year. She says an extension would provide support during the drought recovery period, as economic recovery may not be possible until at least harvest next year. Phyllis Miller is hoping an appropriate package is decided on.
This is about floods and water, inundated crops, loss of fences, loss of livestock. It's a whole different ballgame, so I would suggest that it would have to be a rescue package of some description.
Kira Ballinger, Win News.
While Coonamble residents wait for the next flood peak to arrive, classes have begun again at local schools. For some students who live in flooded outlying areas, that's meant swapping the school bus for an SES boat piloted by volunteers.
As the floodwaters spread west from Coonamble towards Quambone, there are many roads and paddocks that are simply impassable. The only way in to isolated farmhouses is by helicopter. Choppers are dropping feed for livestock or an SES rescue boat. On this day, the task is to get a woman and 2 children into town for school. When there's this much water, life jackets are the order of the day. It's an eye-opening side of life in Coonamble for a Sydney-based volunteer.
So we've arrived from Sydney as a replacement crew for the flood response, and since then we've been sandbagging, we're doing a lot of transport over flooded creeks and a lot of recon work and flood readings. So it's been very busy for the crews, but a very different experience for us.
On the day school began after the evacuation break, school staff member Tina Fletcher wasn't sure what she'd find.
There's a lot of students that live out of town, and there's still quite a few that are in town, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see actually how many arrive. I think they all think that they've got an early start to the Christmas holidays.
When Emily Gray came out from town for a sleepover at her friend's property, a boat ride was the last thing she expected.
Well, I live in town and it's not like this. It's like doesn't have this kind of thing, yeah.
It is a very interesting trip to school.
It's hard to read the signs, but in some areas the water levels are dropping.
Pretty wet, but it's mostly dry now. But it's still pretty wet.
Alan Reader, WIN News.